I'm going to do a little promotion for the Magic Valley Times News on Sunday. The Times News resumes its series about the Latinization of Jerome. This is, of course, from the newspaper that is promoting a world without borders. And if you disagree with that, you dumb Idahoans, they'll be sure to tell you that you're wrong and that liberalism is a self-evident truth. I've commented before they've been doing this series, and they have a difficult time asking all of these people that they're interviewing if they're here legally or not. Seems to me that would be the first question I would be asking if I was out there in the field, but somebody's feelings might be hurt if you did that, and we couldn't have that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the illegal immigration train in just a moment. Do want to mention, though, our good friends at High Desert Meat Processing in Twin Falls, where if you go there, they'll process one animal at a time, and what you bring in, and this is important, what you bring in is what you get back. Darren Van Horn, the owner of High Desert Meat Processing in Twin Falls, he's got more than 3 decades of experience doing this. Visit High Desert Meat Processing on Facebook, read reviews of other customers. You can give High Desert Meat Processing a telephone call for all of your wild, game, and domestic needs. And in fact, the telephone number, 734-9949. High Desert Meat does in-house smoking. Nothing is getting shipped out. They do specialty meats as well. Some of those you could find there, breakfast sausage, brats, Polish dogs as well, hot dogs, and much more. USDA approved. Darren works closely, we should note, with local beef growers and their programs to ensure quality meat. The telephone number, 734-9949. How good of a job is our government doing tracking people who come to this country and illegally cross that border? Well, of course, President Obama doesn't want that border at all. He looks forward to the day when he's president of the world serving at the United Nations, and that's the only government that we have. But this comes out of the Daily Caller today. This should give you a good feeling about how your government operates. It says, feds having trouble keeping track of older, unaccompanied alien children. I guess those would be the ones that, look like Star Trek characters, green faces, white hair, and the, antenna. No. Talking about something else here. The federal government is losing track of a good number of older, unaccompanied alien children who come to the U.S. or came to the U.S. in recent years from Central America during an unprecedented border surge, according to a nonprofit group that provides services to immigrants and refugees. That finding was shared during a webinar hosted last month by the Migration Policy Institute. How do you get a job at a place like that? Hi, I'm really liberal, and I want to go into the ladies' room. All right, you're hired. The writer goes on to say, nearly 78,000 unaccompanied minors, mostly from Central America, have been released here since October 1st of last year. Federal law prohibits the alien minors from non-border countries from being immediately returned to their home countries. In other words, we have a law that says they've got to stay here and we'll feed them out of your dimes. Instead, most are handed over to the care of family members and other sponsors while awaiting deportation hearings. These sponsors, for holding these kids for 3 months in their homes, get $7,000. This is a profit center for a lot of liberals out there who try to promote this program. And yet, we've got hundreds of these kids. Nobody knows where they are any longer. They just simply vanished. They were supposedly being taken care of in all of these suburban homes by all of these limousine liberals, and they're gone. Where did they go? What are they doing? And if you think about that for a moment, since we really don't know who all of them were when they came here, and it could well be that some of them, we've been told for years that ISIS has been infiltrating in Mexico, ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And let's be honest, I mean, if you've got slightly darker skin and dark hair, could you pass as a Latino if you've come here from the Middle East? I guess in some cases you could. So they may have come across the border, and now we're being told we can't find them. And there was a story out a few months ago, and boy, did this one die very fast in the mainstream media, that there was an ISIS training camp 8 miles from the U.S. southern border, or what's left of the border. And yet, again, we don't know where these people are. And when the refugees come here from Syria, how are we going to keep track of them? Will they go vanishing too? If they just suddenly disappear, what then? It strikes me that somebody out there has been selling us a bill of goods and telling us that everything is fine and going to be okay, and if you're opposed to this, that you're just simply obviously a racist and that you need to be shut up and silenced and, locked away somewhere. But they don't lock these people away, and these people just go off wherever they please. 8:38. Bill Colley with you on Top Story this morning on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Do want to point out, coming up, a little lighter fare in the next hour, Chris Anderson from the Herritt Center at the College of Southern Idaho. He'll have some details about what's going on over the next few weeks at the museum. And we're going to talk a bit, too, as well this morning about the new Star Trek television series, which is on its way. Supposed to be a little bit more entertaining than Star Trek Enterprise was, which was with Scott Bakula. A pretty good show, but just it kind of was, in the TV business, they call it pedantic. Also want to tell you, if you're listening to this show this morning, God bless you. Your hearing's probably in great shape. But if you start to lose your hearing, then you're going to miss out on a big part of what we talk about every day. And I've been reminding people that you need to give a telephone call or get online and schedule an appointment for a screening, a hearing screening, with Dr. Christine Pickup, a doctor of audiology. She's located in Rupert. Mount Harrison Audiology and the website, mountharrisonaudiology.com, or you can telephone her office at 208-312-0957. She's located at 1218th 9th Street, and that's in Unit 2. And she'd like to remind you, if you're on medication for high blood pressure or a diuretic, that these medications can affect your hearing. Hearing health is a reflection of your overall health. When you come in for a free wellness hearing screening at Mount Harrison Audiology, did you hear that? Free? Dr. Pickup will review your medications and also discuss ways to protect your hearing in the future. 20 minutes now from 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Plenty more on the way. This is one, speaking of Muslim immigrants, this is out of Europe. More tragedy there and more details on that coming up. Actually, I should note that there was an immigrant group yesterday that issued its Bill of Rights. And they demand respect and, of course, open borders and the ability to feed at the public trough. How about we march them at bayonet point back to the border and say, get the hell out. 8:43, Bill Colley with you on Top Story, temperature 38. I wanted to quickly remind you, we are involved in a program with the Town Square Media radio stations all across the country, but here in the Magic Valley as well. We are actually asking people to contribute to a program that will benefit one military family this Christmas in our area. It's called Town Square Cares. I mentioned this on the air yesterday, would like to mention it again. Now, I don't know that we have anything up yet currently at our KLIX website. That would be newsradio1310.com. However, I do believe if you're looking for details on it, you can go to the KEZJ page, the web page there, or the cool web page, and I think you can take a look, and it'll give you details. And then in a couple of weeks, we're actually going to start asking people for nominations for a military family that would be the recipient of this gift this Christmas. And we're talking about people in many cases who've had their families been under a lot of stress with all of the deployments people have been through. 8:44, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Telephone number 736-0300. And you're up next. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Bill. These young Mexican kids that are using the foul language there, they're being programmed right now to go into schools. They're going to be a terror when they go into schools with a lot of white people, and there's going to be more destruction going on with these children. There'll be more officers who try to put a stop to it will be fired.
Doesn't anybody out there on the left have any respect for borders any longer or laws?
No, they don't. I mean, we've been invaded, and look what's happened up in Michigan City already. That city's been taken over by the Muslims. How many more cities are going to go down?
Oh, lots. If they have their way, a lot. And unfortunately, I don't see anyone, even on our side. I say our side. I wouldn't necessarily say that means Republicans per se. Among Republicans, I don't see. They give a lot of lip service to it, but pretty much everyone is content with it in Washington.
Well,
Boise as well.
Oh yeah. Boise and the Republican Party is they're a bunch of Rip Van Winkles. They haven't awakened yet.
Hey, thank you much for the call this morning. I love that line. Rip Van Winkles. It's 8:45. Again, the telephone number 736-0300, 736-03. There's this tremendous disconnect between what people want and what their political leaders are telling them we need. It was in one of those export-import bank votes yesterday in Washington. And the public doesn't want it. Conservatives don't want it. They call it welfare for the rich. A lot of liberals call it welfare for the rich. And they failed to reauthorize it in the summer under a lot of pressure from a lot of people, including conservatives, and now they're quietly trying to reinstate it. So a congressman yesterday, who's a fairly stand-up guy from California, said if we reinstate it, he wants no one to be giving any money to people who make American airline jets so that they can then turn around and sell them to Iran, so that Iran doesn't pick up all sorts of our technology and industrial technology as well. And you know what? It went down to defeat because 63 Republicans sided with Democrats. How much do you want to bet that one of them his last name is Simpson? Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look over the vote count on that one yet, but it just shows you they don't care any longer. The big donors want it. They'll reply to the big donors. And the rest of you, please show up and vote for me on Election Day. Here's a picture of Ronald Reagan. 8:47 now this morning on the program, and call it 39. So might have a bit of a quick warm-up today. That would be nice. Speaking of, I was talking a couple of minutes ago about military families. I saw this story today. This is one of the longest stories I've ever seen published in the Washington Times. When you print it out, it's 12 pages long. The author is Rowan Scarborough. Aaron Allman case makes Minot Air Force Base ground zero in military's new gender wars. This is a story about a decorated Air Force photographer. Yes, they do decorate photographers sometimes for good work. He's 39 years old, been in multiple war zones, and he had been sent to Minot a year ago, where he was supposed to work training other people in photography, especially combat photography. But he has a bit of a, how shall we put it, a sweet spot for women. 3 women in the office where he works have accused him of sexual harassment. Now, he's not accused of rape. He is not accused of even groping these women, from what we understand. But he's a little fresh. He's been hitting on them, is what's going on. So they have complained. He is up for a court-martial, and in fact, it says it could put him away with a sentence of 130 years. Now, the subheadline in this story says, combat photographer accused of making passes at women faces harsher punishment than Bo Bergdahl. How does that happen? I mean, one of the priorities of the Obama White House, and he basically is dictating to the military what they're going to do now. There was another story in the Washington Times today that says the military is so upset with the White House, and in fact, even one Democrat, high-ranking Democrat in Washington serving in the House of Representatives, admits it's true when John McCain says this, that the Democrat says the military has not been this angry with the President of the United States in decades. Which probably means Jimmy Carter. Well, it could mean Bill Clinton, I suppose, too. But how does the guy, he made passes at 3 women, he could get a sentence, because he'll die before 130 years. He's 39, so yeah, we'll probably say that's accurate. How can he get a sentence of 130 years, but Bergdahl gets to walk away scot-free in order to protect the president, because the president traded 5 cutthroat terrorists for him, who are now back in battlefields or will be soon, blowing up Americans? What sort of people are running this program? Sergeant Allman, who denies wrongdoing, goes on trial Monday. The setting is a general court-martial, the military's most severe, a felony arena. He is charged with unwanted sexual contact with 4 women, 3 Air Force, and 1 civilian. Let me correct that then. I'd said 3, 1 civilian woman. The case does not involve, the writer says, rape or what the public might consider overt sexual assault or what could be defined as fondling. So he probably 30 years ago in the workplace, all of this stuff would have been considered quite common. Not today, and today you can go away to jail for the rest of your life because of that. On the other hand, you can wander away from your post in a war zone, and 6 of your colleagues can get killed searching for you, and you know what? They give you a pass to come home. So the next time you're up in that Haley area and you see them out guzzling beer, you'll know exactly how this system works. 8:51 now on the program. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. You can reach our program today by dialing 736-0300, 736-0300. I also have this. One of the reasons we've been involved in all of these wars overseas is simply what the left won't admit in this country. We are at war with Islam. Clearly. I mean, you can, oh, I mean, it's a peaceful religion. We're just at war with a few radicals. No, we are at war with Islam. We have actually been at war with Islam perhaps for decades, maybe a millennia and a half now. And there are a few pauses in between, but this is going to go on and on and on. And the Russians certainly are at war with them now because it appears that ISIS took down a Russian plane by infiltrating an Egyptian airport, which was probably quite easy because the Muslims who staffed that airport probably said, yeah, go right ahead. But the Russians won't pussyfoot around with this. You know what they'll do? Because after the Beslan school attack 10 years ago where all the little children were killed by the hoodlums, the Muslim hoodlums, and the movie theater attack, well, Mr. Putin had the attackers tracked down and he had them killed. He also had their families killed. He also had their close relatives all killed. And no one has bothered him, at least within his borders. If we stop and think about this, instead of complaining about that guy, we really need to sit down and work with him like we worked with the Russians in World War II, and we need to wipe this cancer from the face of the planet. We have another caller with us. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story on News Radio 1310. KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And what's on your mind?
Hello.
Sure, go ahead. Hello.
Hey, yeah, I'm American Indian. I'd just like to comment on that Redskin flag. I'm all for the Redskin flag. I'm tired of these Native Americans complaining about being called a Redskin when they can call white people paleface. What's the difference between that?
You know, I talked to a guy one time years ago. He and his father, they were Nanticoke, and his dad had been a Washington Redskins ticket holder for 39 years. And I said, really? And it doesn't bother him? He said, no. He said, I'm honored by it. He said, so's my dad. And when you have there's a team on the Navajo reservation that calls itself the Redskins, then I think it's a little difficult to try and figure out why some people are opposed and others aren't. And all I can think is that somebody just sometimes needs an axe to grind.
Yeah, my tribe's out of Elko, and it seems like they just, not them, but just a majority of them got nothing better to do but sit there and cry about something, make something big and blurt out.
I will say this, and I think that people have to recognize this. I was told one time that during World War II, as a percentage, that people with Italian ancestry may have been, may have enlisted and fought in the war probably greater than any other ethnic group, but I don't think that's true. I actually think that from what I've read, because it's just simply part of an old warrior tradition, that during World War II, it may well have been the indigenous people of this country as a percentage per capita who may have had the largest impact on that war.
Yeah, I'm proud of my heritage, don't get me wrong, but I just get so sick and tired of hearing them crying about a little bit of nothing. And I told my mom, I said, it'd be nice to just leave it alone and just let kids ask their parents, what is a Redskin? Well, it's American Indian. Because a lot of these kids don't even understand anymore. They're not taught that much anymore. And then they can say, well, that's an American Indian back, tell them stories about that,
All I can say, though, is if Washington was a little bit better of a football team, it wouldn't be so bad. But don't do a good job of representing anyone right now.
If they went, if they changed it and they call them the Washington Warriors, we're gonna have people start crying about that too. So
they have trademarked the name Bravehearts, which means they would likely keep the logo on the side of the helmet, and so just go with Bravehearts, because a couple of years ago, Dan Snyder trademarked that name, and there was some thought that that's perhaps at some point he's going to switch the name, but it may yet be a while before that happens.
Yeah, and it's another thing like with the rebel flag. It's just a bunch of people that took the flag and made it different from what it was, And then, you got the Raiders, you got a bunch of gangbangers wearing the Raider helmet colors and everything else. Why aren't they protesting against the Raider flag or anything? It's crazy.
Hey, I thank you much for the telephone call, sir.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Take care now. Thank you for chiming in this morning. Well, when it comes to the Raiders, there are a lot of reasons to dislike the Raiders. Growing up, I sure did. We have another caller with us. It's 8:55. You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story.
Good morning. Yeah, I was wondering if you mind me commenting on that water situation you guys were talking about a couple days ago.
Was that the Kimberly?
The water shortage.
Oh, the shortage. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the powers that be don't want us to know that there is really no water shortage. There's two sets of water. There's primary water and secondary water. And yes, secondary water is, well water, surface water, and we are having issues with that. But there's primary water, which comes from the center of the earth, which is being created abundantly. And it's, hydrogen and oxygen is compressed with the heat in the molten earth. It's created gas, it's condensated, and then it comes up in artesian wells, hot springs, cold springs. That's all primary water, and it's endless supply. And if we tapped into that, we would have no water problems at all. And they don't want us to do that. But look into it. It's called primary water, and there's more than enough to power the whole world here. So just want to make a comment on that.
Thank you. It's a bit like the abiotic oil, which people have talked about for years, that just the processes that take place in the earth. And while you may run low on oil in one spot, the process is just constantly creating more, and that we may never run out because of that. And it's coming up on 8:57. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com. A month ago, after the governor of California said that climate change was to blame for the drought and the wildfires that hit his state this year, actually, a great many people in the scientific community disputed that and said, no, climate change has nothing to do with the wildfires. We've got NOAA out with some new details this morning, National, Ocean and Atmospheric Administration, and now they're contradicting some of their fellow scientists, saying, yes, that has a role on forest fires. But according to the scientists at NOAA, they're now saying that the drought is not caused by any man-made activity. In other words, the drought has been natural, and every few years you get one. Sometimes every few hundred years you get a really severe one. Sometimes they last 2 or 3 years. Sometimes they last 200 or 300 years. You got to learn to adapt. That's the key, and one thing human beings have done very well at over the course of humanity's history is adapt. I mean, human beings live in places where it's constantly cold, and others live in places where it's constantly hot. Somehow manage. 8:58, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. About 20 after 9, Chris Anderson from the Herritt Center is going to join us today. On a lighter note, we're going to talk about some of the things going on over at the museum and at the planetarium. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a new Star Trek series that's on the way on CBS coming up in just a few weeks, I believe. We'll talk about that too as well.